Week 14 is here. The fantasy football playoffs are approaching. And last week, in week 13, we had one of our best weeks in the last few weeks. Our defensive streamers crushed it. The San Francisco 49ers and the Miami Dolphins both tied for sixth on the week with 11 fantasy points. And we also had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Our other streamer came in at number 11 with 7 fantasy points on the week. That means all three of our defensive streamers, 25% owned or less, finished inside the top 12, which is awesome to see. We had a scorching hot start to the season. We kind of fizzled out the last few weeks, had some ups, had some downs. We had a really strong week last week, and we're hoping to continue this momentum into the playoffs. Let's take a look at this week's streamers. And number one for us is a familiar face. It is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I've talked about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm still surprised that they are not heavily owned. I think a lot of people drank the Kool-Aid of the Arizona Cardinals offense that has looked better with Jacoby Brissett, and they didn't really read between the lines in the fact of, what that game had to offer for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. So that left them on waivers for a lot of people this week, right? They should be under 25% owned in most league formats. Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this one, it's a 42.5 point total. We get a home team. It's a divisional matchup, which can be a little bit shaky, but this is why we've stashed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. This is why we've talked about them. They have a good schedule remainder of the season. Last time they played the Saints, 23-3 win. It was originally Spencer Rattler, then Tyler Shuck came in, and it was a really, really dominating game. I mean, the Saints gave up 4 turnovers in that one. They had 5 total sacks, and this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team got right last week. They had a really tough schedule. We had talked about that coming in, right? Tampa Bay Buccaneers had a brutal stretch, facing 4 top 10 offenses in a 5-week span from weeks 8 to 12. But if you look at them from an EPA standpoint, before that, from weeks 1 to 7, they were ranked 13th, right? So giving them a little bit of grace here, right? They had a really brutal stretch. They bounced back in a favorable matchup last week. I think they have a favorable matchup this week against the Saints. And when you look a little bit deeper into this matchup, last 4 weeks, Saints are averaging 1 giveaway per game. They're 10th in quarterback pressure rate allowed. And since Tyler Shuck took over, he's given up at least 1 interception in every single game but 1. He's also been sacked 9 times in the last 2 weeks. So this bodes very, very well for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this matchup. We hope for at least a turnover, maybe 2, right? And those sacks start to add up. And a low point total allowed is going to all come together for a nice outing, in my opinion. I love the play this week. And when we look at the Bucs, they bounced back last week. Like I said, 1 interception, they forced a fumble, they had 2 sacks, and it was encouraging to see. It's what we wanted to see. This Bucs team defensively over the last 4 weeks averaging 1.25 takeaways per game as well. So we can I don't want to say anything's a given in the NFL, but we can almost guarantee at least 1 turnover generated and at least somewhere I'm expecting 2 to 4 sacks in this game, right? They took care of business last time they played. Now they're at home, right? We hope that they can continue to get healthier, right? The offensive pieces on that team getting healthy makes it easier for the defense, right? I mean, less pressure on the defense. And I really, really like the play. I'm glad that people have faded the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's opened up an opportunity for us to pick them up again if you haven't already, because they have a good playoff schedule. Let's take a look at our number 2 streamer. And we're going back to the well here, the Miami Dolphins. We used them last week. We're using them again this week. They take on the New York Jets, 20% owned in this one. Now, it is an away team. It's a low point total, though, 41.5, and we get a low EPA offense in this one, right? Jets ranked 27th in total EPA over the last 4 weeks. And when I looked a little bit deeper into this one, and I looked at the defensive EPA, right, Jets' strength is running the football, right? Miami's defense is ranking 2nd in the NFL for rush EPA allowed over the last 4 weeks, which is a tremendous turnaround. If you remember the Miami Dolphins, they were a laughingstock when it came to running backs in fantasy, just absolutely obliterating them. But they have firmed up and played much better over their last 4 weeks. And they're a defense that I'm keying in and looking to pick up. Now, when you also look over the last 3 weeks, their total EPA, which I had the chart up before, total EPA 11th over the last 4 weeks. So giving them a little bit of credit. Jets again, 27th in EPA over their last 4 weeks on offense. And, 2.3 takeaways per game for Miami. This is what stuck out to me. 2.3 takeaways per game over their last 3 weeks, which is second in the NFL. And the Jets have given up turnovers. They're averaging a little bit over one per game over their last 3 weeks. And over the last 4 weeks, they've given up 5 turnovers, right? Or giveaways, however you want to put it. My biggest concern and my biggest hesitation about Miami, if you're still listening to this part of the analysis, is the weather. If the weather is cold, I have concerns, right? Miami is a team that historically, especially in this Mike McDaniels era, has been extremely soft when the weather has been bad, right? It's 42 when it's sunny, which is cold enough, but not too bad where I think Miami comes out shaky. It's supposed to snow the night before. If that timeline moves up where it's snowing in that game, there could be a little bit of risk, right? I still think it's worth taking a chance though, because it's kind of confusing. Miami plays in warm weather, right? And then when they go play in the cold, they generally don't hold up as well, right? But cold weather, bad offense, even if it is bad weather, it still could be a good matchup for Miami, given how bad the Jets offense is. So I like Miami in this one. Both defenses we played last week, we're doubling down this week. They're still both heavily available. And I am very surprised given what we saw and what we were projecting going into last week. Now, let's take a look at our final defense. And I promise you, this is not one that we had last week. And this is probably the most risky defense of all three that we talk about. But with high risk comes high reward. Commanders defense, 6% owned across fantasy formats. We get an away team here, but we do get a low point total in this one. They take on the Minnesota Vikings. It's extremely sketchy in this one, right? I mean, you factor in the quarterback situation is a mess. It's an absolute mess right now with Minnesota, whether it's JJ McCarthy or Max Brosmer. Now, the sketchy thing is, Brosmer played a Seattle team first start on the road in Seattle. Their defense is awesome this year. It's one of the hardest, if not the hardest, environments to play against a defensive minded head coach. And factoring in the offense and the team is also was really, really in a bad spot going into the game, right? Just bad vibes all around. So, can they flip the script against Washington, who has had a tough stretch here? Now, Dan Quinn has taken over the defensive play calling, but when you look at them defensively, right, EPA wise, they've been one of the worst in the NFL, right, over their last 4 weeks and over the course of the season. Now, they have a lot of guys on the injury report. They got some guys back healthy. They did play the Broncos offense much, much better than we've seen in recent weeks. The Broncos offense doesn't give many turnovers or give up a ton of sacks. So, keep that in mind. They're going up against a Minnesota team that right now 12 giveaways in the last 4 weeks. And you factor in that the Commanders, while they have not been that good, they're going up with a defensive-minded head coach in Dan Quinn, who's going to get some time is going to be able to prepare for Max Brosmer if it is him. It could be JJ McCarthy too, but it doesn't matter what quarterback's in there, right? They've essentially both crapped the bed. 10 sacks allowed in the last 4 weeks. 5 sacks generated in the last 4 weeks is the biggest concern for me. They're not generating a ton of sacks for the Commanders, right? This is kind of shit meets shit. Which shit comes out on top? Now, away team, little sketchy. You factor in both teams are bad. Usually like to err on the side of the home team. Not a lot of options, though, when you look at 25% owned or less and you look at the streamers, right? One pivot point, maybe the Titans against the Browns is also an interesting one. I just worry that the reason I didn't pick the Titans is because I worry about Quinshon Judkins running the football against the Titans in that matchup. So I went with the Washington Commanders, right? We've been given a lot of points, from the Minnesota offense to opposing defenses. Seattle just scored 30 points against them. So Washington is definitely not Seattle, but we'll see if they can give us a solid floor. They're kind of frisky and risky, kind of good, interesting play. But if you're going for upside and you need a win, this could be the defense that you go ahead and start this week. Now, let's move over to our tiers, right? I broke it up into 5 tiers this week to get a little bit more narrow for you. And in the elite tier, let's start it off here. The Denver Broncos start in the elite tier for me. Denver takes on the Raiders, and look, the Raiders are the Raiders, right? I mean, they've struggled mightily. We have seen lately, and they take on the Denver Broncos, whose defense is arguably the best defense in the league, depending on who you ask. It could be that the Texans are the best defense. It could be a lot of teams, but no, it really can't be a lot of teams. I think it's actually really between Seattle, Denver, and Houston. But ultimately, I have Denver here at number 1 in this spot. And then at number 2, I have the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Atlanta Falcons. I'm slightly ahead of consensus here. Consensus has Seattle at 3. I have them at 2. They're going up against Atlanta. They are on the road in this one, but Atlanta's offense, I mean, call a spade, right? I mean, I was hoping for Kirk Cousins to be able to bounce back a little bit. He hasn't really done that yet, and this is a very scary defense with Seattle. A lot of pressure, a lot of pressure. Now the Houston Texans, I was a bit surprised. I think consensus has them at 6. I have them at 3. I think we are giving Kansas City a lot of credit here because it's backs against the wall, must-win game at home, and it's Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. People are sitting here saying, I mean, come on, man. Like, there's no way they're going to lose another one here, right? After losing 2 straight. I get that. But factor in, they are without their starting left tackle and possibly their starting right tackle, right? And I think they lost their third string tackle or whatever would be the next man up. So sh- left tackle, right tackle, and then I think the swing tackle or one of the guys on one of those sides. So they're down a lot of guys, and this is also a defense that I mean, they are arguably the best outside of Denver, right? And Seattle, right? Those 3 defenses right there. So I am not going to give Kansas City, call it some bias because I'm a Denver fan, but I'm not giving Kansas City a pass. I love Houston in this matchup. I think Mahomes and them could give up some turnovers, definitely give up some sacks. And the offense has sputtered and kind of been up and down, so far. Mahomes has kind of tried to work some magic, but I think the magic could wear off here in a matchup with an awesome defense. Now, Cleveland Browns, I have here at number 4. Consensus has them at 2. They're going up against the Tennessee Titans. Titans, looked bad against Jaguars, but Titans have kind of not been as fruitful as they were to start the year to opposing defenses. I like Cleveland. I think this is a tighter game. Not a lot of points scored. It's still a really good play here at number 4, but I have these other defenses ahead of them. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I have at 5. Consensus has them at 5. We've talked about Tampa. No need to spend a ton of time on them. Then I have the Rams here at number 6. Consensus has the Rams here at 4. Look, Rams defense, bad game against the Panthers. They're taking on Arizona. They're going for another road trip. So they travel to the East Coast. Now they're traveling back to the West Coast against the Cardinals. Still a really good matchup, though, right? They're taking on Jacoby Brissett and that offense, possibly no Marvin Harrison Jr. So I totally get it. They might be getting Trey Benson back. Rams, again, another good play. This is why they're in the elite tier, right? I'm not going to fight you if you want to play the Rams over, pretty much every team except Seattle and Denver. You can make a case for the Rams above all of those teams except for me, Denver and Seattle. You have to play those defenses, in my opinion, ahead of them. But then you factor in, they're playing Jacoby Brissett, who gives up a lot of sacks. They do turn the ball over as well. So it's a good matchup for the Rams. We'll see if they can bounce back, but it's a long travel here, right? They travel the East Coast. Now they're traveling back to the West Coast. We'll see how they respond after a tough game last week. It does help when you have an offense that can apply pressure to the opposing offense and might force Arizona to throw the football a ton, which could lead to some turnovers and some sacks, which we like. Now, let's move over to the very good tier, and let's get start with the Philadelphia Eagles. I had the Philadelphia Eagles here at 7. They take on the Chargers. They are on the road in this one, and I get it. Philadelphia's defense looked not that great against the run, and that's probably putting it lightly. They play the Chargers, though. Justin Herbert, fractured hand. I think Hampton comes back this week, but they've been very susceptible to giving up sacks. Now, I do think they're probably going to have a game plan that gets the ball out of Herbert's hands quicker this week, and maybe a run heavy dose, given the fact that the Eagles did give up a lot of yards on the ground. But this offensive line is so bad with the Chargers that I think it's going to raise the floor up very high. I don't think this is going to be a high scoring game. And, they've been susceptible to giving up some turnovers and some sacks. So I like the Eagles here at 7. Very good play. Then I have the Baltimore Ravens here at number 8. I'm below consensus slightly. Consensus has them at 7. I have them at 8. They take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers offense is sputtering right now. I don't even think it's all on Rodgers. I think there's a lot going on there. It just seems mentally like this team is checked out. And this is what listen. I'm not going to get on my soapbox, but I will say the Mike Tomlin era, the last 4 or 5 years after Thanksgiving, they have struggled a lot down the stretch. These teams have fallen apart because usually it's the defense keeping the offense afloat. This year, the defense just got ran through against Buffalo, and so we'll see. But I have the Ravens there at 8. Then I have the Dolphins there at 9. I like the Dolphins this week, and then I have the defense that I just mentioned got ran through with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are the sketchiest play on this chart here. Sketchiest play. I would not blame you for avoiding the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're going up against Derrick Henry, who just did not tote the rock a ton like we had hoped last week. And their defense just got ran through, right? I expect the Ravens to be a heavy dose of the run, but I don't think this is going to be a high scoring game either. Because Lamar has been struggling too. That's why Lamar's taken some sacks. They've turned the football over. That's why I have the Steelers where I do. But it is a little bit of a sketchy play. But Steelers backs against the wall, they have to win. I think their defense comes to play a little bit here. But they are a little sketchy, so I definitely understand that. They maybe should be in the good tier. But moving over to the good tier, I do have the Indianapolis Colts here at number 11. Colts taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaguars have been susceptible to opposing defenses, giving up points, turnovers, and sacks allowed. Then I have Washington here at 12. Then I have the Chargers here at 13. Chargers, they are pretty low. Consensus has them at 17. I have them at 13. They're going to be at home in this one. They're taking on the Eagles. I don't think that offense is changing very much. I like the Chargers. I think they're a solid play this week. Then we're going to go over to the risky but frisky tier. And the risky but frisky tier, not as big. But these are all upside plays, right? There is a case to be made for all of these. You have the Jaguars taking on the Colts. Daniel Jones on a bum leg, right? I worry about the Jaguars though that they may, have Jonathan Taylor just absolutely run all over them. Then you have the Atlanta Falcons. They take on Seattle. This is an interesting one here. Atlanta screwed us a lot, so I would not be super jacked up to play them. If options are limited though, and you see a lot of these teams in the tiers above are not available. Falcons could be an interesting play, right? Seattle has given up some turnovers on offense. They've taken some sacks. We'll see what happens here. But I have Atlanta at 15. Then I have the Tennessee Titans at 16. Titans obviously taking on the Browns. Consensus has them at 11. I don't have the Titans that high. I get it. Shador Sanders. Again, I'm going to keep mentioning it. We're at this time of the year. Teams want to run the football. Quinshon Judkins, I think, runs the ball a lot here. Now you're hoping for some turnovers and some sacks, but I am below consensus by 5 spots on the Titans. I think they're a risky but frisky play. But I would, be cautious to I know we're targeting the Browns, but still a little sketchy here with that play. Then I have the Packers here at 17. They take on the Bears. Interesting here. I've talked about the turnover luck with Caleb Williams. They did give up a turnover last week. Caleb did not look that great, but the run game was so good that it forced them to not have to put Caleb in spots to throw the football a ton. And so I have Green Bay here at 17. Consensus has them at 12. I'm actually below consensus here. Maybe I'll slide them up a little bit, but for right now, I feel pretty comfortable at 17. If you think that's a slight to Chicago, many analysts, clearly because of consensus, actually think that the Packers, I have them way too low here. I have the Jets here at 18. I talked about the weather, the cold weather with the Dolphins. Weather being at 42 degrees is not super cold, but Dolphins are a weird play when they go on the road in coldish weather. So I have the Jets here at 18. I don't love the Jets, but again, high upside plays here. Then I have the Saints here at 19. Saints taking on the Bucks, and the Bucks, Baker Mayfield. with the shoulder. They are getting healthy at the right time. I don't love the Saints, but again, all these plays are risky but frisky plays with upside. Now, if you don't want to take the chance with upside, there are some floor plays here. Um, that I don't love this week. These are kind of hold your nose tier. These are some more floor plays, and sometimes some of these the floors aren't that high. Chicago Bears taking on the Packers. Chicago's down a lot of defenders. Josh Jacobs in this run game could be a little bit scary against that Bears team. Then you look at the Buffalo Bills. I did want to have the Buffalo Bills a little bit higher, but I just couldn't put myself to putting them higher. I think it's a high scoring game against the Bengals in that one. You're hoping for some sacks and some turnovers, like we say about everything. But if you don't get those, I worry the floor is not going to be as high because of how many points will be put up in that game. Then I have the Kansas City Chiefs here at 22. Look, they're taking on the Texans, but the Chiefs don't generate sacks. They don't generate turnovers. We saw it again last week. They really are having a tough time. That George Karlaftis contract, not looking the best right now. They paid him a lot of money and he's not really showing up for them. And they're having some issues right now. And honestly, credit to the Texans. Their offensive line has looked better, and much better than what we saw at the beginning of the year. Then I had the Minnesota Vikings here at 23. It's kind of sad to see Minnesota here so low. But I mean, this is just kind of where we're at with them. I mean, the offense is putting them in bad spots. And consensus has them at 18. They're going up against Washington. I get it. It might feel like a nice play. That's why it's a floor play for me, but I don't think the ceiling is as high. And then I have the Dallas Cowboys here at 24. Defense has played better, but they're still taking the Lions. I get it. No Sam Laporta, no Amon-Ra, St. Brown. It's a short week, though. They're on the road. I expect points to be had in that game as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like the content, make sure you hit that thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you leave a comment as well, even if it's not a question, just to let me know your feedback and your thoughts. It helps me out tremendously. But good luck in your matchups this week. Keep an eye out on my Twitter account as I make updates. I know I haven't been the best at updating on the YouTube community page. I'll do my best, but time crunch. I got a lot going on, so I'm trying to get it out in as many places as possible when we're pressed for time at the 1 o'clock kickoff on Sundays for updates. But take a peek for updates. Let me know your thoughts on the content. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next.